says 2010. Yeah, so 2010 was quite a while ago. I mean, I graduated in 2010, so but Rose Petal is also it's a mood, it's a vibe. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm participating in a really awesome tag, hashtag goodolddecks by Nova Mundi Tarot. This is a topic that's been near and dear to my heart lately. I've been going down nostalgia lane, so when I saw that Nova created this tag, it just really made me smile. I have 10 decks, I believe, to get through today, all of which have been featured on TarotTube that we once kind of blew up and were centered on and obsessed about, but that have kind of fallen to the wayside as more and more options have come out. So let's just hop right in. And the first deck I want to talk about is the Napo Tarot. So the Napo Tarot has been around since at least the 90s because my copy has 1998 there. It's by US Game Systems. It is still available. The box will look different because they did a design refresh on the box. I can't speak to if they updated the cardstock, but the cardstock on this is like the old US Game Systems cardstock. It's like a satin smooth. It does have a bit of weight to it, so there's a core in it. And I purchased this secondhand last year, so I haven't had it super long. It's just been around for a while, and I really love the artwork. It pulls forward so much emotion. I don't know what it is. It's simplistic but has a lot of depth at the same time. I do have mine in order currently. I was going to do a side-by-side with another deck, so I'm using it as a daily draw in that capacity. And I want to show, so look at this Hermit card. Look at that guy. He's so sweet and adorable, and his robe is precious. It's one with the landscape. He's got a rainbow on his shoulder. Another favorite of mine is the Empress, giving me Isis or Isis vibes. Just, I don't know, it's a really great deck. I love the geometricness to it. The lemniscate is the brim of her hat. It's really great. I've been having a lot of fun using it. It's very steeped in Argentinian culture and lore because both the creators, Betty Lopez and Napo, have that tie, and it's just been really great. It, for me as a daily reader, it is like a straight shooter. It gives me the answers that I need and not always the ones that I want, but it's not mean about it. It's just very straightforward. I always know what I'm going to get. Just feel like I don't see this one talked about or featured on TarotTube, and I think for this deck, it's in this category of decks that came before YouTube was a thing and TarotTube was a thing. Videos weren't the main way we consumed marketing surrounding decks, so I think in that way it's kind of not gotten the spotlight at all. I adore these backs, and there is a reason. It is explained in the guidebook why they chose these backs, which I really feel that creators should do more often, is include why they chose that specific back. It provided a lot more context for me and history, and I love that. I love that a lot. I am super glad that I have this deck and that I have a more vintage copy. I just love vintage old school things, so anytime I can purchase a deck that I can, find a more vintage copy or secondhand, I will do so. But that one is still in print, still available on US Game Systems website. Moving on to deck number 2, the deck that I wouldn't even be here without because it started my whole journey, but that is the Mystical Shaman Oracle. Now I will say this one and another deck that I'm going to feature, maybe a couple more, are on the more talked about side here and there, but it definitely goes in waves, and that's kind of how my relationship with this deck has been. So if you didn't know, this was my very first deck ever in tarot or oracle, and I came across it through an ASMR channel, and she would do weekly readings for the week, and I thought to myself, well, I want to do that. I want to be able to read cards, and she was so articulate and brilliant with her readings, and I was just like, I have to do this. I just had a calling to it. So I did a lot of research, and she used a lot of Colette Baron Reed decks, Ina Segal decks. So, I was kind of already in that frame of mind as far as what I wanted to get, but the Mystical Shaman was first published in 2018, and that's when I started my journey because of this deck. It was recently published at the time, and it came in a big outer box with a sleeve of this. It had a sleeve around the box, a big box. Inside the box was the guidebook, and then this hard 2-piece box. And for a beginner, it just felt really luxurious and like truly like opening something extraordinary and special. And so it really kicked off my journey, and we have been on again, off again since. I spoke earlier this year about possibly rehoming this, but everyone here dissuaded me. I am very sentimental, so even if I could repurchase this deck again because it's still in print, it wouldn't be my original copy, the one that I've broken it. I worked so hard to break this cardstock in. It's super thick, and there are something like 60, I don't know, is it 62 or 64 cards? So at the time, for a deck to have that 64 cards, for that a deck to have that many cards was like really extraordinary. I do feel like Colette has always had more cards than the standard like 44, so I think she's always done a pretty good job with that. But because of the sheer like thickness, and it's like, it is a matte cardstock, but it's like the lamination is very, very interesting, but it's a super thick cardstock, and that was one of the things that kind of deterred me at first, is I couldn't shuffle it. And even overhand, they used to clump so bad. Now I've worked with it, and you can see it really glides beautifully. I don't know if they've updated the cardstock since it first was released, but at first it was super clumpy. The card, like, I had to train my hand to riffle shuffle of tarot and oracle. My hands are pretty small, and I wasn't used to like shuffling, like I was only used to shuffling bridge size. So at first I had a lot of hand on like discomfort, but eventually I got this cardstock to break in, and even riffle shuffling now is really beautiful and very, very smooth. But it took a lot of work, and I would just sit down and like shuffle this while watching TV, not necessarily doing a reading or anything, but I spent a lot of time with it physically in my hands to break it in. But Racine from Owl Moon 513 also talks a lot about this deck, and it always makes my heart so happy because it is an older deck. It is a Colette Baron deck, which, you know, the community is hit or miss about, but I think the intention and the collaboration with Alberto Filoto and Marcelo Lobos really brought in a lens of respect and veneration for shamanism, and that's the part I really connect with. So anyway, the deck that kind of started it all, an OG, one that I don't really see featured too much anymore. It's still out there. I still see it once in a while on a channel, but just something to mention. Now, moving on to the second independent deck I ever got, and that is the Anima Mundi. Now, when I was doing research to find another deck, I started with Sasarai Bito and a classic RWS. I worked with them in tandem. I was drawn to the artwork of Sasarai Bito, but I wanted that reference point of a classic RWS at the same time, because the Sasarai Bito has some cards that don't exactly, they're not a clone, so I wanted that reference point. But I just was seeking something else, and I came across this deck, and it is more nature and animal based. It has some animals in it that are very significant to me. Bears is one of them, and the fact that the King of Pentacles, the bear as a King of Pentacles, it just is so perfect. This deck was all over TarotTube at the time. I mean, I sat down and I would watch video after video after video. Even if it was just another walkthrough of this deck, I was watching it because I just needed extra validation to go ahead and purchase it. So I watched all the videos I could. This was talked about a lot. It was shown a lot. And the only human in here is the devil. But it is a little bit on the pippish side, but it's pips with feelings. It does have a scenic element to it, so it doesn't exactly leave you without, you know, anything to draw from. It's a very special deck that I won't ever get rid of just for the sentiment of it, but I don't see a lot of people talking about it anymore or using it or even having it on their deck list. So I just wanted to feature it here because it really used to be an old favorite of everyone's. And the painting style is beautiful. I believe this was originally, I don't know if it was released as a tarot deck in 2017, but Megan Wire-Whedon, who is the artist, does speak about that's when the paintings were originally done. So again, around that time period, which in my mind, I'm like, yeah, 2018 was like 2 years ago, right? But nope, it is not. This deck is still available. You can still find it in print on Etsy, or I believe Megan has a website, yeah, thecreepingmoon.co. Just, this was such a darling of the community, and I don't really see anyone feature it anymore. So the next one, similar to Napo Tarot, has been around. I believe this originally came out, the Gill Tarot, in 1989, early 90s, somewhere around there. This printing is from 2018. And it is still available on US game systems. I have a back and forth relationship with this deck, but first off, I wanted to say that it is a Katie Flowers made me do it. When she was posting and had her tarot channel, I would say that this was a soul deck for her, and she talked about it all the time. She featured it on her channel, and she sold me right away on this. She has a beautiful vintage copy, and nowadays some of the vintage copies go for, they can be pretty spendy. The artwork is so beautiful, and the pips are just so like interestingly done. So they feature a large number, usually a very minimal depiction of some, like a very minimal scene, and then a keyword. I don't know what it is that makes me go back and forth with this deck so much. I think part of it is sometimes the, like, is this wands or is this pentacles? You know, sometimes my brain doesn't exactly know which minor arcana card is being shown. And that was more towards like the beginning of my journey. I haven't really, wow, I mean, look at this star card. Absolutely gorgeous. So at the time I was still new and learning, and the Gill Tarot wasn't exactly clear to me, but I just can't get rid of it. I've had this in purgatory many a time, and I just hold on to it. I just know that there's a time and place for us, and it's going to align, and so I keep it. And it's been a companion, a shelf companion, and it makes me think fondly of that period of TarotTube where Katie Flowers was still posting. I think Imogen, oh gosh, there was an Imogen on here that I was watching. She was also very, very popular. Is it Imogen Waters or something like that? But just like OG creators of TarotTube. And if you still want to interact with or see Katie, she does have another channel. So she shifted from doing tarot to her true passion, which is books and reading. And so her book channel is Katie One More Time. And if you miss her, if you want to stop in and say hi, if you just want to interact with her content again, and her, she is still on YouTube. She just focuses on books now. And I always stop by and watch video because, I don't know, just, it's like a hug. The next deck I have here is Earth Magic. Now, I do see this deck every once in a while. I think especially in the Oracle realm and like the Seasons of the Witch era of Oracle cards, there's just so many more options out there nowadays that I don't see this one as frequently. But I tell you guys, and I think you guys know by now, this is a staple for me. This goes with everything. I love that it has a keyword here with what is like being shown. The guidebook is phenomenal. I have cried reading it. Me and this deck have had a time, and it's very gentle in nature, but it doesn't shy away from the tougher messages. But when you read the guidebook, it just gives you such a sense of like hope and connection, and I feel like I could tear up talking about it now because I have had such profound readings on its own and paired with tarot. It's just a really, really precious deck. It says 2010. Yeah, so 2010 was quite a while ago. I mean, I graduated in 2010, so yeah, I really, really, really love this deck. I think it gets overlooked a lot for newer decks, but it's just a really gentle companion. I have a soft spot for it. So another deck that in the independent realm that kind of blew up when it first was launched is the Star Seeker Tarot by Nikki Ferrada. I remember seeing this deck everywhere and I always wanted it. At the time, just budget didn't allow. So I recently got this one this year, which I believe I featured in one of my haul videos. I think it was the first one. I'll link it above if you're interested. This says 2020, so technically, I mean, that was already 5 going on 6 years ago. I remember it creating such a not a fuss, but people going crazy about it because it is like an art vector style. And I think it did a really good job of keeping color and just it's evocative. It is so vector style art, it tends to be very 2D, very flat, even though it's digitally done. But this deck still made it evocative. It also had these edges here. They're matte purple. And it was one of the first decks that I knew of that really featured the rose petal craze. These are that true sticky like rose petal. I do not like rose petal, but I know that it can be broken in. I do also know that nowadays there is a type of rose petal that's a little bit more shuffleable and not as sticky. It's not as a dense coating on the cards. Rose petal is also a little bit more protective of cards and helps them last a little bit longer. But I just remember this art style and everyone going crazy about it, and I completely understand why, because it felt very modern in a way and just different from everything else out there at that time. I mean, look at this world card. It's beautiful. I believe that Nikki still prints this deck, but again, you can find secondhand copies of it. I did, and it's like perfect, like in perfect shape. It does come in this clamshell style box, which aren't my favorite. So the Spacious Tarot has this clamshell style, but it isn't. So the outside of this is also rose petal, whereas the Spacious Tarot is not. So I can't pick up the deck like this or like this because the lid just voluntarily pops open just from opening it a lot and using it. But anyway, I digress. So the next deck that is also, in my opinion, like one of the OGs of like TarotTube beginnings is the good old Fountain Tarot. Now, the Fountain Tarot has my ideal and perfect box. It is not glued here where you only have this as a flap, but it comes down. And to me, that it's like, it's just a brilliant design. I love it. Let's see if it has a date on here. Honestly, it says 2017, and for a deck to be $40 in 2017, I feel like that's kind of pricey, right? Anyway, but well worth it. So the Fountain Tarot, a very polarizing deck, but one that I absolutely adore, as you've heard me speak. So while others might not feature this on their channel much anymore, I definitely have. I love this deck to pieces. I think that is completely opposite of what everyone else thinks or pigeonholes it to be. They say it's cold and it's distant and it's hard to connect with, and I disagree. I totally get, like, it's very artsy and like poetic, and it reminds me of ballet dancers and physics, right? And angles, and but it's ethereal at the same time. I don't know, it's very interesting. And I didn't get this deck in 2017. Obviously that was before I even started reading cards, but I had known about it pretty much right after I dove into that world. And honestly, all of the reviews about it being cold and distant and, you know, a little aloof kind of really detracted me from getting this deck, honestly. And when I finally was like, you know what, I am interested in it, I saw a secondhand copy on Facebook Marketplace in one of the Tarot for Trades group and buy and sell groups there. And I was like, you know what, they're selling it for like, I don't know, 15 bucks, which is less than half of the retail price for this. I was like, I'm gonna give it a shot. What do I have to lose? And I instantly was like, I should have gotten this deck much sooner. I do know every once in a while I see it featured on people's channels, but overall I feel like the hype and the adoration for this deck has kind of really died down. And again, it's very polarizing, so it kind of, you know, isn't always featured in the best light, in my opinion. But I don't know, I just say take everyone's opinions with a grain of salt. If your gut feels like it needs to work with this deck or you're interested, just give it a try. Just give it a try. You never know. Moving on. So this was a deck that was one of the first under a brand new imprint, and I'm talking about the White Numen with Liminal 11. Now these decks, especially the first couple, so Modern Witch and White Numen, were one of the first under Liminal 11's imprint. And these decks took the industry by storm because of the way of their packaging. So I know a lot of people have different thoughts and opinions about this packaging as well, but specifically I wanted to talk about White Numen because it had a lot of hype when it first was launched. One, because of the packaging, also because, you know, Liminal 11 was newer at that point in time, and the art style is pretty different from what was kind of being featured at that time. It has a like almost a comic manga lean to it, the artwork style. I see a lot of people rehome this deck, feature it in decks I'm getting rid of, putting in my purgatory, etc. But I just really connect with this deck. I love the use of color. I love how emotive. It's very moody, I will say. It has a mood. It's a mood, it's a vibe, and I don't know, I like it. I like it because it's different. I like it because it's feminine but ambiguous at the same time. And I just remember it being spoken about a lot when it was first launched, and then there was a lull period, and then, like I said, I saw this kind of being rehomed a lot in videos or on Marketplace, always seeing it pop up as an option, but I still resonate and connect with it. I can't remember which or what the date is on this one either. Let's see here. 2021. So not exactly the oldest on my list here, but one that I feel is definitely kind of forgotten about. Next, I have Ethereal Vision. So again, a case of this launching and becoming very widely popular. The Art Nouveau style and the way that there was cold foil stamping on the face of the card was kind of something new in this way, like in the different designs. And so the combination of the softer colors, the bit of bling here, the art style, really made this a very, very popular deck. And it's one that I don't see on people's channels anymore or talked about. And it really hasn't been too long. This is the updated version, so I don't know if it'll have the original print date in here. 2017. Okay, I didn't know. I didn't know it was 2017. Interesting. And then they updated it in 2022 with an expanded guidebook. And to me, it feels like different cardstock, but I don't have my original copy to compare it to. So yes, I did have this. I did rehome it, but I brought it back because I just don't have anything in my collection like it, and I thought about it a lot. So again, just another one that really was popular when it first came out. Like, there was so much hubbub over it, and then it's kind of died down, and the creator has gone on to make a slew of other decks that are just as beautiful and amazing and have different concepts to them, which is great. I think the art style has evolved from this first project here, but I don't know, I just, every so often, I just get a pull to work with this. It really made the RWS, I don't know, I don't want to say friendlier, but it stylized it for me. It is basically, I would say, very clone-like. If I were to do a side-by-side, it wouldn't stray too much from the RWS depictions, but it just stylizes it and puts more fancy to it, and that really drew me in. I think it's still a viable option for those who are learning tarot. It's a lot more elevated than a classic RWS. If you don't resonate with that artwork, this is a really, really, really great option. I like these backs a lot. And finally, a deck, another oracle to complete this list, is the Shamanic Healing Oracle cards. Now, this style of box specifically, there's a few of them in this style, and I guess I could blanket cover all of them at this point, but this has been around since 2016. And I do remember it being featured a lot, but I recently picked this one up this year. It's always one that I had seen around, that I knew was like a classic in the Oracle card realm. But because I have the Mystical Shaman, I thought, well, maybe Shamanic Healing would duplicate that. But they are vastly different, in my opinion, not just in art style, but in overall tone and just the energy. I think either Katie Flowers also talked about this deck on their channel before, and that was also appealing to me. And so for those reasons, I just feel like this does not get any love anymore. It's a great deck to pull a card before bed and reflect. I really like using it for that. I think the dark background really leans into that nighttime lens for me, so it kind of fits the theme really, really well. And I think it just matches that, and it's a pleasure to work with. It does have the sharp gilding, the sharper kind, and if you kind of run your finger, it does have a lip. That's kind of more what causes the sharpness, is that little lip than the actual like gilding part. But I like the size. It's a very accessible size for an oracle deck. Backs are I wish they had just gone with this, but it does have the name of the deck on it, which for a while there was kind of like the trend back in the day. But yeah, so the Shamanic Healing Oracle cards round up my decks for this tag. So thank you all so much for perusing the decks in my collection that I feel are from the good old days, that haven't been featured a lot, that continue to kind of get overshadowed by everything else, all the options that we have. And while it's awesome to see new options come out and be available to us because it provides different perspectives, it's also important to remember that there is still magic in the older decks. So with that being said, until next time, see you around.